Good evening. Again, we are doing the second part or second session for our series, New Shooz. So continuing these conversations with visual communicators, where I've invited a panel of good friends and colleagues to talk more about what they do, their career path, and just give some tools and nuggets for success. So again, this is in exchange for the networking interview assignment that you would usually do, instead of you meeting with just one person and hearing about what they do and what they like, being able to give you an assortment of different folks who can share more about working in different capacities. So I'll give like a light intro, and I put it in the chat. Let me put it in there again. And this is also on that PDF that I sent you guys. Just those questions. So you don't have to cover all of them, but when you do your intro, feel free to take your time and just go in depth more about who you are and what you do. So let's start things off with Andrew. And Andrew, how do you say your last name? Let me make sure I'm saying it right. McConville?
Yeah, McConville.
McConville, okay. So Andrew and I attended UWM and graduated from the Peck School of the Arts together as well. Same as on Monday, we had Shelby and Sarah a part of the panel. So they were able to chat before. So excited to have you. And we've kept up. We've had a segment about networking, but keeping up with Andrew online. We're friends on social media, but excited to have this opportunity to work together. It's almost a full circle moment to be students and now be professionals. So thank you for joining us. And will you just introduce yourself and share more?
Yeah, for sure. So I graduated like 10 years ago or so.
Exactly.
And so now I am a user experience engineer. And so essentially what that means is I'm like half designer, half front-end developer, coder, at a company called AccuLynx. And it was a startup when I first joined it. And now it's like a normal, regular sized company. And so we make software for roofers. And so everything like a roofing business would need to run their business, you can kind of do all that stuff within AccuLynx. And so I went through the DVC program. Um, After that, while still working, I also went through UW-Madison has a program called MAD UX. And so that's a year-long program. It's a graduate certificate in user experience. And so there you learn like research, design, prototyping, and then testing mockups and stuff like that you build. And now I'm actually back at UWM as a teacher and a student. I'm getting an MFA in design. What do I do on a daily basis? That's kind of interesting. A daily basis. So we work in 2-week sprints. If you've ever heard of like Agile or Scrum. So everything in my life is a 2-week like pattern. And so it's essentially my job to meet with designers and engineers and product managers to make sure that what we're building is possible. Like, have we ever built this before? Do we have anything like it? Is it something that's totally from scratch? And are we going to build it, or maybe we can partner with somebody? Like we have Google Maps in our application. Like, we're not going to build a mapping program. That would be insane. So we just use Google Maps. And so I spend a lot of time kind of just doing that and keeping design consistent. Like when I first started, I was the only designer. And so, I mean, that was kind of nice because I got to do whatever I wanted to do. But now we have like 5 different teams. And so we have to keep, everybody on the same page. So it doesn't look like when you're moving through our application, it doesn't look like it was made by 5 different people or more. And as far as like programs and stuff, we used kind of like anything. We started with Illustrator. We used XD for a while. We're on Sketch now with InVision app. We use Lucidchart for like flow charting. We use Miro for like whiteboarding because we're kind of remote now. So instead of like post-it notes on a whiteboard, which we do use, now with our remote people, we use that. But it's kind of open, just whatever people need to work, we let them use that. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And glad to have you back at UWM. So we'll have to, of course, connect again. It's been interesting. I'm growing my network of educators on a collegiate level, just trying to expand on that experience more. So love to chat with you more about that.
Yeah.
And next we have, let's do Kiersten. And I'm saying your name right?
Yep.
Kiersten. Okay.
Kiersten. Yep.
So she also attended UWM and graduated from the design program, but was 1 year ahead of me. And so again, keeping up with her, she's an amazing artist. And I thought I was going to be able to find it. But I have my own custom artwork that was made by her, a beautiful, what do you say, paper doll? I
Yeah,
believe.
you have one of
Yes.
my first paper dolls.
Yes, one of the first ones. But this amazing blend between digital arts, and then also illustration. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And will you please just introduce yourself and share more?
I'm Kiersten Ghaznavi. I attended UWM for graphic design. I was with Andrew, I think so 2012 we graduated, so quite a bit ago. And I did not want to go into graphic design, really. I thought that that's what I was interested in. I've always loved to draw and create visual art. So quickly I realized that graphic design was not what I really was interested. I think before I graduated, I realized that. So since then, I've been working on just a visual art more. As a career, I do illustration, and occasionally I'll work with people on not coloring books, but like children's book illustrations. I've done some graphic design here and there, but mainly I like to kind of work on my own practice. So I use what I have learned in graphic design to kind of work on my own work now. So as Marquella mentioned, I started making paper dolls in 2015. So just very small articulated dolls, kind of taking the illustrations that I've always done and giving movement and life to them. And they started out very small and personal. And up until most recently, they've gotten to about, I think the tallest I've made now is about 8 feet. So they've went from 8 inches to 8 feet at this point. So I've also self-published coloring books. I'm working on a kind of a part 2 to my coloring book. Have it here. So the anti-adulting adult coloring book. So just an opportunity to use some graphic design, but for things that I really want to do that help expand my personal practice. I currently have a joint show that's exhibiting at 5 Points Art Gallery right now. It's called Plastic Off the Sofa. I use graphic design with this set of dolls because I design my own patterns and use that to create some fabrics and different textures to mix in with the kind of a multimedia approach with those. So that's kind of where I am at with graphic design and art. And I just want to continue to grow that practice and kind of expand where I take these dolls because they're kind of my pride and joy right now. So
I love it and very excited for you. And so, of course, the whole point in New Shooz is to share the pathways that people have expanded on, even past graphic design, how that intermingles with other things, how you've grown and found other interests. So thank you. Next, let's have Christina or Tina Klose, who works for the Milwaukee Health Department. A good friend, a great colleague. We have done a lot of work together recently, over the last couple of years around COVID. So excited to have you speak with my students today. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, thank you. I'm excited to be here and love listening to everybody's stories. So I work for the city of Milwaukee. My role is a creative design and brand specialist. I did go to UWM and earned a BFA in graphic design, but my major originally was photography. And I'm a bit older, so at that time I was actually rolling my own film. I I remember my parents vividly driving me down to Chicago to do my study abroad in London. And I had my own little film roller, and I just sat in the back of the car and rolled film. And it sounds so antiquated right now, but so after that, I don't know, I came back and I just, for some reason, thought I didn't want to be a starving photographer or shooting pictures of kids in a mall somewhere. And I jumped into graphic design, and I really didn't know a lot about it. It seemed a little intimidating at the time. The computer labs weren't probably as amazing as they are now. So that was a little hard at the time. I remember spending a lot of time in the Kinko's on Brady Street late at night using their computers and printers. Back to what I do now. So I do have a very unique role, and it started, my role with the administration started the week of COVID starting. So I didn't get to do all the brand and creative design that I thought I would do. And because it was a dual role with the health department, I jumped into COVID response, and pretty much that was the only thing I worked on. And working remotely was an interesting challenge at the time. I was in daily 8 a.m. meetings with the mayor and his cabinet and learning things that, weren't in the news yet. So it was a little terrifying, but also exciting. And I felt like I was there for a reason to help out. And that's how I met Markela, because we just couldn't handle a lot of it on our own. We needed lots of partners. So she came in as a freelancer, did some mass campaigns for us and other things. But really, there wasn't a lot of help at the time, and leadership and staff changes a lot at the city. So that can be a little chaotic, and we were going through some of those challenges. But I did help stand up the COVID website, did a lot of flyers, social media, whatever we could do. We just jumped in and kind of made it up as we went.
And your
So-
vaccine stickers, I'm pretty sure. at least
Right.
a lot of people have some of those.
Yep, if you went to the Wisconsin Center or some of the health sites, you may have gotten one of the stickers I got to make. There were stickers, pins. We did a lot of English, Spanish, and Hmong translations. So that was also quite a challenge. Our marketing staff would put out press releases every week. We'd have to translate a lot of content constantly. So I felt like I was a translator for a while, just shipping that through the channels and getting things posted as much as I could, as fast as I could. So that was quite challenging. My role is also unique because I get to work with a lot of different departments. There's not very many designers in the city. So when I first started, I was 25. I worked with the Common Council City Clerk's office as a graphic designer. I was young, thought I'd stay 2 years, and now it has been 22 years, which sounds crazy. But that's one of those things where I would suggest just staying open. I learned to pivot, and I switched roles to a community outreach liaison position with city development. And that kind of involved both my passions of design and also old houses. I'm a sucker for old houses. I love our Milwaukee housing stock. I own 3 properties with my partner and fiance, Jeff. We're having work done right now. So just working with the city, I learned a lot of different things in development, and then I went to neighborhood services in a communications role. So I just kind of expanded my skills and moved beyond graphic design. And sometimes you find roles, especially at the city, where our marketing staff, you kind of have to wear a lot of hats. And it's not, sometimes I do miss that connection with other creatives because there aren't a lot in the city. But I've worked at some smaller agencies when I was out, first out of UWM. But I've just somehow stayed and learned to love the city. And there's such great staff and smart people to work with, and so much to learn. So it's kind of exciting being at the city. And is there anything else I needed to hit on there?
I think that's it. Unless, do you feel like you covered, were there any programs, mediums, or platforms you use?
Sure. Usually just the basics, in design a lot, Illustrator, Photoshop. in-house products like our content management system for building our website. Other than that, not too much. I've dabbled in Canva, but I like to stick to Adobe products a bit.
Definitely. Thank you.
Sure.
And yeah, to say, even though you've had a long career at the city, I definitely think the work that you did, was some of the most impactful work I've ever done. And, you know, just being able to help and spread that message, and then having to translate it. But then also really appreciating your story and sharing that journey, what it's like to work in-house and working for certain departments, but also having variety, or, you know, having a vision on what you think you'll be doing in a role and then having to completely pivot to what the need is. So thank you for sharing that. And last we have DeChazier, or D. Um, D and I, again, are good friends. We met, and it's funny, we've been friends for a long time, but I believe mainly through AIGA and events. And of course, also just being like Black creatives, we've sat on a few panels together, and just networked through other things. If you're familiar with 88.9 or Radio Milwaukee, their brand for their Black and Brown radio station, Hyphen, is some of his latest work, doing the branding for that. So Dee, thank you so much for hopping on. I don't know if you looked in the chat. I tried to drop those questions in there, but do you mind introducing yourself and chatting more?
Yeah, no problem. And I actually have the PDF up as well. So
Awesome.
yeah, thank you for having me. My name is DeChazier Pykel, go by D, one letter. I am now newly, I mean, it's been a little bit, but newly executive creative director in Chicago at an agency, Contender. That is a startup. So was at Cashmere, but just recently left. Yeah, I went to Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, graduated in, don't want to age myself, but like 2004 now, right? So been in the industry for like 19 years. Really thankful to be in the industry, and it feels like a long time, but it also doesn't. I studied communication design. I graduated with a BFA in communications, and yeah, I think from my perspective, the sort of journey that I've taken and like where I'm at now, compared to where I started, was interesting. So I worked in Milwaukee at a place called Nonbox, starting right out of school. Was an intern there. Did everything there, right? Like new business book, spray painting on hot summer days in a room with no ventilation. Then corner in the very back office. Working on everything from logos to websites to everything. Left there a little bit after, maybe a couple years, 2-3 years after starting. Went to JWD Creative, which is still up and running, great design shop. And what is it? The Hyde House on Greeley. Worked there, much more of a design shop. Worked with GE Healthcare on a lot of their different initiatives and programs, and that was the major client for them. Then I went back to Nonbox a little bit after, was director of social media for a while, and that was right when yeah, come on up. And was director of social media for a while, and that was when social media just started becoming, what it is. So I jumped into social media, really loved it, really started to understand how it worked, and not only how it worked, but also how it connected to the campaigns and things that we were doing, right? And then around 2019, had some things happen. One of which the owner, unfortunately, and mentor at the time, that worked at or that was of Nonbox, passed away. And at that point, I just said to myself, like, look, everything in my life was saying, like, just jump, go. I wanted to stay here for so long, and I still live here, but I wanted to test myself against some of the larger markets, right? So I jumped in, got a job at a place called 1035 in Chicago, started as creative social media strategist, quickly moved to associate creative director, was there for about 20 months, did some of my I think some of my best and some of the funnest work that I've been able to work on while I was there. I'll get back to what that favorite piece is, right? But then from there, stayed there for 20 months. I will mention that that was around the time that, well, that's when COVID happened. So that was interesting, right? Nobody really knew what was going to happen in the industry at that time. But then also like the unjust murders of like George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, etc. So there was civil unrest too, right? The thing about that was working at a diverse agency. When something like that happened, all the brands, every brand in America wanted to tap into culture and they wanted to do something, whether it was genuine or not, they wanted to jump in, right? And so because of that, we were able to do so much work around that time, and we did some like really important work around that time as well. 20 months in there, just seeing, sort of like, all right, I sort of know where I stand when it comes to everything. Let me take another jump. So I took another jump, started working at Cashmere in Los Angeles, California. Again, still living here, but just like, traveling for shoots and things of that nature. My dog might go crazy in a moment, sorry. But beside that, had a lot of fun there, worked on a lot of projects there, but then really just started thinking about like where I wanted my career to go and what I wanted it to encompass. And opportunity arose, opportunity arose for me to come back to Chicago and become a executive creative director. And so with that, I will say that probably the funnest project I worked on was the T-Pain, like Lipton iced tea. We made him Cousin T, and we sort of got to do this like webisode or web series. So that was definitely the most fun. I think the most impactful was probably the Life Water project that we did, Black Art Rising. And that was right around the time of everything happening, like I said. But that was amazing because it got Black artists' art out on social, on Life Water's social media page, as well as we got to get some artists who weren't professionals some shine on their stories as well, right? And then programs are the same as I think everybody has said when I'm working, in that now, again, that was that journey. Now it's like, Microsoft Teams and Zoom and Google Hangouts, because I'm on, it seems like 50 million meetings a day, and I don't really get to do and like actually work on those things. So when projects like the hyphen thing comes up, I relish it to just get back in and actually make some things with my hands, right? So yeah, I think I hit on everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yes, again, excited to have all of you and just hear more about what you guys are doing and more of that journey. So now we're going to get more into questions. I have a list of questions I've composed already, but class, please feel free to ask any questions, make any comments. It's highly encouraged in the chat. And feel free to also use the Q&A tab. And I'll try to poke you guys, but panelists, feel free to look and see if there are any questions that you do want to answer or chime in on. You can type them in as well. There'll also be a point at the end where I'll ask for your contact information or how people can keep up with you. So if you want to type in Word real quick or somewhere, something that you can share in the chat later, that would be good. So we're going to kick things off. And I always like to start with a gentle question, which is, what do you love most about your job? And anyone can.
I'll jump in. I would say if you have the opportunity to join a startup, it is super fun, especially in the beginning, because it's just y'all just doing whatever you're doing, and it's very kind of laid back, and it's super fun. Especially while you're young, I would say do it, when things, the stakes are a little bit less. Because one of the parts that I love about my job the most is my coworkers at this point, because like we've been through some wild stuff together. Like is the company going to go under? Are we not going to have money? So it makes for a unique experience.
Thank you. It's very helpful. And of course, I think, I mean, of course you want to get paid well, but, you know, liking who you work with, you know, having an intimate relationship or a close relationship with your coworkers, having a safe environment, a fun environment. You spend so much time working, you know, it becomes a priority that this is a fun thing, an interesting thing to, you know, be a part of. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I will. You touched on something earlier when, you know, working with us in the health department about the meaningful work. And I think that's probably what's kept me in the city so long, is I do find that I'm helpful and um, try to be customer service oriented. And, you know, it is a very bureaucratic environment. So for a creative, it's not always the easiest place. I mean, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing here and think, oh, an agency would be so much more fun with a bunch of creatives, but then that has its own challenges as well. Um, but I do find the work very meaningful. Like I said, the health department and working on the COVID response felt like I was, you know, in that position at the right time to really help out, make an impact, and just the staff. I love working with different departments. They all have different goals and initiatives, and there's always something exciting going on. It can be hard to keep up with everything, but overall, it's mostly exciting and um, kind of an exciting thing for us too is the city would have never allowed people to work at home remotely, but COVID kind of did that for us. So I'm still working remotely. Maybe one of the few that, you know, because I do a lot of digital work, social media graphics. I also lead a social media collaborators group. And like Dee said, it's interesting to hear, you know, you pivot kind of from a graphic design um, the origins and then get into social media where I think we all have to be sort of a jack of all trades sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not a social media strategist by any means. And why am I running these accounts? Um, but sometimes you just have to pick up, you know, where there's a gap and you fill in and jump in where you can help. And like I said, we are kind of siloed at the city in different departments and there aren't very many designers or marketing staff. So I just try and fill in where I can and help other departments when they need it. So it's kind of fun and keeps things interesting.
Thank you. Anyone
I'll,
else? Oh,
yeah, I'll say, you know, very quickly that I think, you know, touching on what Christina touched on, like I've been wanting to work from home forever. I think that what we do as creatives is fed by being able to set up your own routine. I do enjoy, I think as you said in your intro, Christina, like I do enjoy working with other people, and I sort of feed off of them. But I mean, we can do that. We can get together outside of that, and outside of just the computer. So I do love that. But I also love now at the role that I'm in, being able to uh, really affect change, really being able to up the diversity in this field. It's been something I've wanted to do forever. And it feels like I haven't been doing enough, but it's only because, again, it is a journey, right? It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And so now I am finally in position to be able to like reach out to people that I've either known, reach out to people that are looking to like build, people from something called One School. You know, if you don't know it, like look that up, where it's, you know, specifically for um, uh, upping the diversity in advertising and graphic design and creative, the creative professions. And so, um, honestly, that's the best part. And then just smashing stereotypes to bits when it comes to like all of this amazing work that we get to put out. So I love that.
But I think it's helpful to try and stay creative in other ways. I feel like I do need some other outlets. One thing I do serve on the Milwaukee Arts Board, and I have for quite a few years, and also the Public Art Subcommittee. So that kind of keeps me in touch with other artists and just seeing what's going on in the city. We do a lot of grant funding for different groups. I just served on a panel, a review panel this week. So that kind of keeps me involved in the arts a little more and just gives me something else to do that I enjoy and kind of sees what makes you see what's going on in the city. And we are so lucky to have so many arts groups. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
But they've also, had a lot of challenges during COVID, getting audiences. So it's nice we can help out with some of our funding when we can.
Yeah. And Kiersten, you were going to say something?
Yeah, just I do like kind of doing this more independently where I can kind of work at my own pace on creative ideas that I have, but also I can kind of work with people who I really wanted to collaborate with. So I have that freedom. And I can kind of straddle fine art and like graphic design in this space as well. So I enjoyed that.
Thank you. So not to throw a question out there that wasn't on the list, but it came up before and I thought it was very interesting. Any tips for starting out? So I'm talking right after you graduate, you have folks that are finding it hard to find something in design, or you want to freelance, or you did land a gig or an internship somewhere. Can you talk about any tips for that first experience, that first year? Anything you want to share for them?
Yeah, I mean, I can throw out some tips, just like devour everything, ask to be in rooms that you might, if people are working on something and they wouldn't have ordinarily asked you to be in the room, like ask to be in the room. But I think even before that, even before you're like in an internship and you're doing all those things, like really practice what you preach. Get out there. If it's a show flyer, I mean, I know people might be a little bit like cliche and people have said it before, but honestly, get out, show flyers, CD covers, even if it's for your friends. I hate the word free because what we do is so important. But
Great.
the one thing that I do is like barter, or at this stage of my career too, if I'm working on something and I'm like, hey, I want to donate that, right? To sort of like help or give back if it's a cause that I really believe in. But when you're first starting out, just like barter. If there's somebody that takes photographs and you're a designer, it's like, hey, I want to do your logo. If you can make me my new LinkedIn picture, like, or take my new LinkedIn picture, like, just make sure that you're out there and you're getting some sort of value for what it is that you do. Because if you set up that precedent of free, even when you're just starting out, people are gonna. I still have people hitting me up for $250 or $300 logos, right? It's like, it's changed a little bit. But at the same time, I think, treat every customer and every just client or partner, right? I'll say, treat them all the same. From when you make it big to, just starting out. And I think in my career, that's really helped, right? And people have noticed that, and yeah, I think that'll help.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that, because I think we've all had that, where people, for some reason in the graphic design industry, think we all want to work for free, or it'll be great for your portfolio. How many times have we heard that? But I think Dee hits on something too, that you can use your power of your design skills to volunteer with organizations that you care about, and volunteer your time, and then that kind of helps your portfolio and shows you are community oriented and you want to give back. So that could be a good way to lead into paid gigs down the road. Like I've in the past joined my neighborhood association. Started off, just as a board member, but then it turned into writing for the newsletter, designing the newsletter, but then it kind of just grew to too much, where I was writer, designer, putting it out, handing it out on the street, getting it from the printer. It just became too much. So you have to watch what you take on sometimes, but
Don't
also
get me started.
right. But also barter when you can. I've done, logos for boat companies downtown before, and every year if I updated the brochure, I got a free boat, and I wasn't really good. I used to do a lot of freelance many years ago, but I felt like I was never really good at the invoicing. And a lot of times it would be people I knew or friends, and I would just let invoices linger and just wasn't really too serious about it. So that's probably not the best way for me to go. Even though I enjoy freelancing, and a lot of my friends used to say, why don't you start your own? And I'm like, I don't think I could do that. I mean, it's fine on the side, and maybe things would be different now, but at the time, it's just not something, that I could do on a full-time basis, I don't think. Like Markela, I know I see you out there and you have to hustle hard. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Listen, but I mean, that's the good thing about Milwaukee. There was a time that I wanted to leave here. I wanted to go to Austin originally. When people ask me how business is going, I always tell people Milwaukee takes really good care of me. The network is small. So if you're doing good work and I'm leaning into things I'm passionate about, like you guys were saying before, you're making an impact. Some of these things are starting to all be on the same pipeline and wheel, naturally. So I can't be lazy for sure, but I have to keep up the appeal, but also keep up the work, and then keep those outlets open, and then make sure I'm submitting my invoices to get there. But yeah, thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Tips for that first year out?
I would say have a process, like know how you get work done and how you can solve a problem, because hopefully people are going to be coming to you with something you've never done before. And if you know how to get from some person's vague idea that they're just trying to describe to you what you want, and neither of you probably know what that is, but you have some way to take that idea and turn it into a thing and do that over and over and over and over, like know that and know how to describe it, know how to talk about it to other people, because if you can do that, then they will be confident that you're the person that's gonna get them what they can't get themselves.
Thank you. That is a very valuable point. So often, of course, you want to be a good worker, you want to be on time, you want to be great, but there's so many pieces to that. You have to learn how to be a good communicator. You have to learn, I had to become a morning person. I don't like any type of day. I need a nap every day, but how do I create a life where I can take a nap? Or, I know I'm not a type A person. So how do I express, what my work style is and find something that fits for me? So of course, being younger, of course, you want to be a bit more malleable and understanding and accommodating. But also on the flip side, finding something that is realistic. If you're never going to get up at 5 a.m. to get to this job that's, 2 hours away, don't take it. How can you find something that fits your needs? So some folks, I think there was a point we never thought about working virtually, and now we get to be at home and you enjoy that. There's more flexibility, more things that can get done. So again, thank you guys for sharing. What else can we do? Can we talk about either the best or worst career decision you've ever made? And you can pick which one, worst or best career decision.
I mean, I've always
Dang.
kind of wanted to do more creative stuff personally. Like, I kind of wish I got into like the entertainment industry, like, I don't know, like Disney or games. I mean, right now I'm making roofing software. That is not that interesting, like for real.
But you're getting paid. Look.
Right, right, right. And so, like just listening to D talk, he's in that world of, and same thing with Kiersten. I think that's probably why I'm back at UWM right now getting an MFA, because like I need my creative outlet. So, but I don't know, that's a crazy world though. Like, what Tina just said, you got to get that invoice, right? You got to do all that stuff. And so it's a trade-off. You can't have everything, but sometimes I wish I was doing a lot more creative stuff. So do that stuff while you're young, try it out. Try out different companies.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say the best decision that I ever made, career decision, was not to quit, right? There's been a million times where I was like, damn, like what am I doing? Why do I keep doing this to myself, right? And it finally paid off, and it happened in like such a crazy chunk of time, right? I just want to really highlight that, because there was like 14 years of me being like, really, this is it, like, what am I doing? And then in like 5 years it was like, here's everything you ever wanted, right? Part of that was me leaving. I'm not saying leave Milwaukee because I love it. I'm still living here for for obvious reasons. But you know, I'm gonna say I don't have any worse career decisions. You know what I mean? And I think the reason I'm saying that is because even the decisions that were bad helped me learn, helped me understand what it is I need to do in the future, right? And so, one could say, oh, the worst decision was like staying here for as long as I did without jumping out. But I'm a firm believer that everything happens in time, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at this moment in time. So, I don't really see it as that. I don't really see it as any worst career decisions because everything led to who and where I'm at right now. So.
I agree with that for sure. Like I'm glad that I get to kind of do more creative things, but sometimes I do miss just the structure of, something like a roofing kind of thing. Like that's guaranteed kind of outcome basically. So I do think that mistakes are kind of like failing and you not necessarily failing, but kind of trying out like what path. If you're choosing a path like me, where I'm kind of just doing what I really like and finding what it is still, and I enjoy that I can experiment with mediums, and if I get an idea and I'm like, okay, how do I make this happen, and kind of enjoying the process basically. So if I try something and I don't do well, it's not necessarily a failure. It may not be the path, but I may get another idea out of that fail. So yeah, enjoy the process basically is what I would say.
All right. And I put a question in the chat. I'll ask that next, but just want to give you a moment to read it. It's a question I was asked in the last class. But in the meantime, what resources keep you inspired?
Well, I have to say I hadn't been on Behance in a long time. I don't know if anybody uses that much anymore. But I know Markela shared it, so I did make a few updates after I learned how to get back into my account last night.
My bad.
But because I don't do freelance anymore, or I'm looking for a job at the moment, I really haven't kept up with any kind of portfolio in years. And especially since I've, transitioned through some other divisions of City Hall. So I guess I haven't paid too much attention what is out there sometimes, but looking at Behance, I think there's some good just portfolios and some good work out there to look at and stay engaged with. In the past, I've always tried to sign up for different resources like Graphic Design USA. That's a free magazine, or at least it used to be. They have some competitions, different graphic design annuals, things like that, just to see what's out there and what's current. Can help inspire you at times. I'd also say just collaboration with others. I try to do that a lot at the city. It can be a struggle though when we're across departments, but I think it makes your team stronger when you get different viewpoints. Someone from IT and maybe of a developer mind, and I'm more visually minded, and just bringing projects together and how it works on the user experience. And in government, we are not cutting edge by any means. So it can be a struggle with, budgets and using the tools you have and staying creative. But I definitely, need to get out there and kind of get my creativity amped up a little more.
Yeah, and I also think the work, the boards you're on, the things you were saying earlier about like houses and your interest in that, I think that all counts too as inspiration, that you're kind of involved and invested in different ways in the arts. So
Yeah, my fine arts degree helped me tile an amazing bathroom floor once.
Yeah, see?
Really had to lay that all out and make a pattern and almost cried, but I made it and it was successful. So you never know when your skills might come in handy, that detailedness, you know.
No, definitely. Anyone else? What keeps you inspired?
I really like talking to people who are creative, but not necessarily visual creative. So musicians and like even like people who are athletes or writers, and like just the way that they approach their day-to-day work. Like it's all kind of interconnected in a weird way. We all as creatives kind of have a similar approach but a different outcome. So I love to hear how other people kind of approach creating music or like preparing for like whatever sport or thing that they're into. So that stuff always inspires me. I recently took a road trip through the South too, and I got to kind of experience a different just area, completely different than Milwaukee. We went to New Orleans and Houston and Memphis, and just the food, the culture, just being somewhere different, just getting out of where I am kind of was really inspiring. It helped get me kind of excited to make some new stuff. So
Definitely. And when I go down south, my family's from down there, the signage, just some people say Milwaukee's old, but we don't have as much old signage as you guys do. Like, this is nice. Like, I could walk down Beale Street and just be mesmerized by all the lights and the signs. And that's inspiring, for me to just think a little differently about things. Maybe I'm switch up my color palette selection and style, just because of that. So thank you. Not to cut you off. Anyone else want to share things that keep you
No, I would
inspired?
just piggyback on the travel. I think that can be inspiring. I was in New York over Thanksgiving and just it felt like such a creatively inspired trip just because there's murals everywhere. There's parklets that are built in the coolest little ways I've never seen, taking because during COVID they were trying to use any space they could on the, curb, little island, visiting different museums, different shows, theater. It really made me, I don't know, think about actually doing other things and maybe not working at the city, but I gotta get out there. I just gotta find time. And like I said, Michaela, sometimes just want a nap and it's been a long day. And
Yeah.
I used to do freelance after work. I'm more of a night owl. So I would freelance sometimes at, working 40 hours a week at my day job and then freelance and I'd stay up till 2 in the morning because that's from 11. I'm just on it, but I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. I was tired. So I just couldn't do that much anymore.
Thank you. And then the question I have put in the chat was asked before. I can't recall which student, I think it was Allison or Giselle. Design has been competitive lately. It is hard to not be discouraged from design spaces when you're rejected or see others with great portfolios. I am someone who is competitive and thrives on my confidence. I struggle when I'm doubting myself in the design world. If you can relate, how do you get over this phase?
I can definitely relate. Sort of imposter syndrome is kind of sort of like this, right? Feeling like you don't necessarily belong or whatever. I'll tell you, it's not easy to get over. I mean, I think all of us just when we're in or a part of a profession that we give so much of ourselves to, um, it's difficult, right? I think one way to look at it from my standpoint is that like there's enough room for everybody who is genuine and who is really trying to perfect their craft, right? So um I understand that competitiveness, and that was me right out of school. Me at me at 41. I don't even look at it I don't even look at it that way. I don't look at it being competitive. I just look at it as me trying to better myself and be the best me that I can be. and I think it's worked. As far as like that imposter syndrome and like sort of feeling like you're not good enough, you just have to really just quiet that self-talk. And the way that I quiet that self-talk is like hanging out with friends, listening to music, reading books, just really preparing myself in other ways for the things that I'm going to encounter when it comes to my job. Um, but there's not, I mean, from my standpoint, right? Others on the panel might have some thoughts on it. From my standpoint, there's no real way to ever just like kill it off and be done with it. Like it creeps up at different moments. You don't know when it's going to creep up, and you just have to be confident in the the fact that you're doing what you feel you're meant to do.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think as artists, we tend to compare ourselves to other people that are doing something similar, or you feel like maybe they're ahead of you as far as like where they are in their career or talent. And I mean, even outside of art, sometimes you feel like you can compare yourself. I think social media can exasperate that basically. So it's just going to be a thing where you have to kind of quiet those things, those distractions, and just focus on what you're doing. And if you're doing the best that you can and you're proud of the work you're making, then you shouldn't compare it to what someone else is creating. And it's not a race. So that's just what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to keep doing too. Because if you just keep doing, like, yeah, you're gonna fall, stuff isn't gonna turn out right, but that'll just kind of be diluted by all the successes that you had. Like everything's not gonna be perfect. And if you just keep going and just keep trying and just keep doing, um, you're in good practice. So when like some big moment, some big event, some big opportunity shows up, you may not be ready for it, but you'll be a lot more ready for it than if you just were not doing anything up into it. Now all of a sudden you have to prepare. You don't want to be in that moment where you gotta, prepare hardcore for something that is like super important to you. So just don't stop.
It's a really great point.
Yeah, and I would ask others here, do you feel like as design kind of staff at places, do you have to have that kind of tough skin and build it up where, your feelings can't get hurt every time your design might not be chosen, or you have to take criticism well and take it in, just try and do better, but your designs aren't always going to make it? Or, it's like working in the city, I will sometimes consult with ad agencies. They can do so much more than I can on my own. So I sometimes need to reach out to others, and maybe my creative isn't always the best and top notch, but we've got a lot of things on our plates, and you do the best you can, and you just, like Dee said, try not to get so down about it and beat yourself up about it, and just move on to the next thing and find the thing you're excited about, and work harder on that. But I hear you, it can be frustrating, and I'm sure it's a tough kind of world out there for a beginning designer, when you're just getting started, and having someone take you seriously or take a chance on you when you might be new. So I just say keep sticking to it and try your best and try not to get down about it, and you'll get there. It might be a slow path, but you'll make it.
Yeah, and it seems like honestly over time and experience, you're defining your quality, who you are, what value you bring. And then on top of that, you're working for folks. So that trumps everything. They need stuff done. Stuff needs to function. It needs to get done within a budget, So again, just as I'm trying to connect my stories to some of the people on the panel, Dee did a brand. He does some local brands. Should I be offended? Like, I'm here in Milwaukee. Why didn't they pick me? Should I be beefing with Dee now? Or do I need to be focused on, there are so many opportunities. There are only so many graphic designers. There are some people that only will reach out to you because they want to work with you because you're a woman, like it's woman owned, or because it's Black owned, and not the pie is cut so thinly that there's an opportunity for everyone. same with Tina, having to pivot, you know, and then having to give your work or divide your work up amongst someone else, you know, so she feel like she's not good, or, you know, that, you know, she wanted this opportunity over another, but there's so many others, especially now that we're more in a digital world. There are just so many more opportunities. You know, it feels good to maybe imagine yourself working somewhere or the impact you could be making, but to also be thankful for the opportunity and experience if you do have to like take that L and try again. And sometimes it comes back around in a bigger and more beautiful way. So thank you for sharing that. Another question that came through, and I added it in the chat as well. On top of, and it says graphic design, but I'll open that up. On top of your core skills that you have for your career, so graphic design or photography or art direction, things like that, what are some other skills that you think you have that have kind of been to your advantage, or skills you need to get to where you are now? And it doesn't have to be like to digital or technical, you know, like confidence.
I'll say that the other skills that are an advantage to me in my career are speaking, even though I hate speaking in front of super large groups, but being able to articulate myself and communicate clearly has been a great skill. I would also say being able to, and I think for me, it's just stuff that I like, right? So I was lucky in the fact that like I love sports, I love music, I love entertainment, I love social, like I love these things. So I'm automatically like I love reading, I love magazines. So I'm automatically up on a lot of the things that are going on and that can then transfer into like my career, right? Like knowing who's hot on social so that we can use them as a part of our campaign, or you know, just being inquisitive, being like hungry for knowledge, like AI, very huge. People don't know what to do with it. I dove in right away. You know, Mid-Journey, and now you have like all of these songs that are being created um for or of artists that, you know, haven't actually created them, right? Using the AI technology. And so people are just afraid of what they don't understand. So I seek to understand it so that you know, you can think about ways to use it. So for instance, with Mid-Journey, people were like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." And at Cashmere, before I left, I was like, we're scouring the internet for images, for things to put into these decks. We could just make it on Mid-Journey, make it look 10 times better, have it be something that is like high res, and we can like change the game. Now that I'm gone, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do that." And so they're doing it. But then also for me, it's like we spend so much time for like storyboards for commercials and things where we're like, we need to get a storyboard artist. We could also use it for that. So it's just finding ways that like, yeah, is the final product going to be AI? No, but it's going to make our lives a lot easier by being able to jump in. So just like staying ahead of technology, staying ahead of the things that are going to pivot into, or I should say, feed into the work that that we're doing. Um, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share skills that have helped them along the way?
Yeah, I'd say also too, being able to, this is going to sound kind of goofy, but being able to talk to people. Like a lot of designers, and this happens where we work all the time, they will design something, whatever it is, but they will have not actually shown it to somebody, like an actual user or another person. And if you kind of have to do that to some extent. I mean, sometimes you don't have time to do like research, there's not budget for it. But if it's going to be a big project, there's going to be a lot of people working on it for several months, and you're designing it and then kind of, you know, handing it off to other people. You kind of need, you need to know if, you know, the thing that you designed is what other people want to use, what your customer is going to ultimately want to use. And I think the nice part about that is it kind of helps, I don't want to say like absolves you, but it, I don't know, it puts me in a better place because it's not just like me. This isn't just my thing that I made with my opinion that I did in my bubble. And so if somebody doesn't like it, then I'm going to feel kind of like attacked or like, oh, that's my work. If you've interviewed whatever stakeholders, actual users, whatever your research process is, if you go about that and you do that and you follow that, the knowledge that you get from that and you apply it towards whatever it is you're designing, if it's like an app, when it's being critiqued or people are talking about it, it's not necessarily about you, because as a designer, you're kind of just this aggregator of knowledge. And so you can say, well, the research showed this. This is what the users wanted. If we don't think that's right, let's go and talk to different users. Let's go talk to other users. So it kind of takes like your ego out of it a little bit. And you don't have to feel like, the comments that are being made towards your proposed design don't reflect necessarily on you. So it makes it a little bit easier to take criticism too, I think. So talking to people and taking criticism is tough, but a lot of people don't do that. And I think if you can do that, it just feels better. You'll get a better product and you won't necessarily feel like you're in the spotlight so much.
Yeah, and design is so much about collaboration. We are the creator. I do consider myself kind of like the guide for my client. And I really do want to say sometimes whatever I say is go. Whatever I say should go, but that's not the reality of it. So you do have to kind of compromise or communicate it differently, or just make sure at least there's an understanding. I have a client, I had to just ask him one day, like, hey, do you want me to keep pushing back, telling you this don't look right, this pixelated, or do you kind of just want me to design what you want? Like, this, instead of going back and forth, having those honest conversations, to get that feedback and get to that finished product. There have been times I've been very stubborn about how I wanted something to be, and then I actually did end up agreeing with the client, or at least seeing it from their perspective, why it was so important for them, for me to keep or, do whatever that edit was. Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll do one last question. Okay. So one that we didn't get to in my last session that I thought would be interesting is just talking more about, where do you see the industry going, your industry in particular, going in the future? And I guess to expand on that more, as they are looking for jobs, even speaking of what are some of the career shifts or interests or things that they should be on the radar about, new platforms.
Yeah, I think AI just came up, right? And that's going to be a thing for sure. That's going to happen. And then even like other platforms, like what's after the phone? Like, is VR ever going to be anything? Maybe it will. VR, AR, all that stuff. I don't know where it's going. But there's so many like tools and so many software, like, so tools as far as like AI goes, but even just as far as like software tools like Illustrator, Sketch, Figma, all that kind of stuff. There's so much stuff out there that kind of enables a lot of people who aren't necessarily designers to be designers, or to kind of be better than they normally would. And so almost going back to what I said before, like research, knowing how to not just make something that looks good, which is important and everything, but is it actually meeting the goal that your client wants? There's that first layer of, wow, this thing looks awesome, this thing looks great. But if you can tie it to, and this is why a lot of people will come to you, they have some metric that they're trying to meet. They have some goal that, if it's a university, they want more enrollment. If it's a business, they probably want more signups, or, whatever. There's some kind of metric. But being able to understand that and to like conduct research and know what your design is doing to meet that is going to set you apart from anybody else who's just kind of just doing and just making only at the visual level.
And Andrew, you touched on something that kind of has bothered me in the last year or two. I feel like tools like Canva came out, and I started using it early in the pandemic because another coworker had an account. Did some little animated graphics, but then I'm just so used to Adobe products, and I feel like it makes me less unique if I use Canva, and now it seems, I'm almost getting offended that everybody's a graphic designer now and like, oh, I'm being replaced by Canva all of a sudden. So trying not to get worried about that because everybody's making their own designs now for social media. They don't always need me. It's a lot easier for them. But then I also start noticing the same fonts, the same graphics, the same little clip art or illustrations, and it starts to look a little generic. So I kind of struggled with, do I use Canva because everybody's using it, or do I stick with, kind of making things more just an InDesign or Illustrator because I can make it different, or does it not even matter anymore? And things are kind of merging, and I don't know what is the Adobe program now. It used to be something else. Now I think it's Adobe Express. It almost seems like that's a competition between Canva and making everything very fast on your phone. And for someone like me, I feel like I've always been that desktop user. And, if you look at like the Milwaukee Public Library, they had blown up on TikTok the last year. And it was just different staff that kind of got together through COVID, started making videos and fun memes. And they were on the Today Show. I mean, they were all over the place.
Yeah.
But now they kind of have to get back to their regular jobs. And I don't know if building their content is sustainable. And also, if you've paid attention, like I do, to a lot of social media, Twitter is kind of all over the place right now. And TikTok, actually, a lot of governments were banning it. And the city of Milwaukee is actually following the state, and they're going to ban it on city employees' phones. So we're not really supposed to have accounts anymore. And that's kind of an interesting issue happening right now.
That's a
And
great point.
oops, sorry, Quay. And that, just piggybacking off of that too, I know they have like, I don't know if it's Adobe Spark or whatever, where it's like, oh, they have templates now for your social media stuff, right? So you just take the image, you plop it in, you do whatever. And they're making it easy. But I think the thing that we just have to recognize in the profession is the currency is not like the skill set, right? Because anybody can learn the programs. It doesn't matter if they're good or they're bad. What I've encountered is that people are like, oh, this is what you charge, I can go get it over here for this. It's like, be my guest, I don't care. I'm not going to like lower the value of what I do because you don't want to pay as much, right? And I think to Andrew's point, I think what he was saying, in the piggyback off that, it's like it's ideas. That's the currency, right? If you can come up with ideas, great ideas, putting things together, being able to understand how a campaign works, but not just works like, oh, billboard and all this stuff that's old school. It's like, how does it work now in today's market? Like, how does it work 360 view of what is the social component or the creator house, right? What is the what is the campaign like? How is it going to like sort of speak to culture or speak to people emotionally? And I think ideas being the currency is the biggest thing that you have to worry about, because if you have ideas, you don't have to worry, right? If somebody steals one of the ideas, it's like, I got a million more. The actual like act of creating it is not the thing that sets us apart. It's our minds, right?
I love that. Anyone else? Great. Well, guys, thank you so much. Again, if you have any specific contact information or ways for people to follow up and share more or connect with you, please do that. Oh, Kiersten, can you please share more information about your exhibit? I wanted to make sure we got back to that before we got off, because that is like happening right now.
Yes, it's called Plastic Off the Sofa. It's a joint exhibit with myself and an artist named Vitus Shell out of Louisiana. It's showing at 5 Points Art Gallery. It opened April 7th. It's going through May 28th. I can drop my website and drop the gallery website, so you can kind of get more details as well in the chat.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, again, guys, thank you so much. I know this was very valuable to my students, and I've learned so much as well. And I see that they're dropping things in the chat too. So please, again, going back to our networking sessions, you know, and everything you've learned today, I hope this was valuable and this is something you guys will take and pick their brains or ask for more. But thank you again for new shoes. I'll be reaching out on the side and saying thank you as well. Enjoy the rest of your evening and go Bucks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet you. Peace.
Bye.